Wave Media, and the ChinaAcademy.org. We are here at the invitation of the CIFF to speak with three distinguished speakers. Professor Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University, one of the most influential economists of our time and a foremost proponent for sustainable development and peace in the world today. And Mr. Charles Lee, the former chief executive of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and it was during his tenure he started innovative programs such as the Hong Kong Shanghai Stock Exchange and the Hong Kong Shenzhen Stock Exchange. And currently, he's the founder and chairman of MicroConnect. And our very old friend, Professor Zhang Weiwei, who is not only very influential in policy advisory, but also one of the most popular political scientists in the public sphere in China. His books on the rise of China, the China model, China as a civilizational state, has sold multiple millions to the Chinese people. And he also has nearly 20 million followers on social media in China. So here we go, 21st of January today, China time, which is still 20th of January. So we're the first day into Trump's new administration, inauguration day. He has promised so many threats. He has said so many, floated around so many promises. Are we really going to see a shock and awe moment and changes in global geopolitics? Is he really going to end the war in Ukraine within a day, as he said? Or is he going to be mellowed into the institutional bureaucratic inertia and nothing really is going to change?
You want the Americans to answer first?
Okay, as an American, I'll speak about our new president. I think that we are likely to see some real changes from the Biden period. I do think the Ukraine war is likely to end, and that's a hugely beneficial thing. I think there's actually more likely to be peace in the Middle East and between the US and China than was true of the Biden administration. Trump believes in going it alone, but he's not especially warlike. He doesn't like international rules. He doesn't like the UN. He has pulled out the first day, the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement and from the World Health Organization. This is part of the Trump idea that any global rules are a constraint on American freedom and sovereignty. I don't agree with this. I think countries agree together to do things for a reason because it's mutually beneficial. But in the Trump ideology, agreements with other countries is just a constraint on your own action. So he believes in unilateralism, but he doesn't especially believe in war. In fact, I think on balance, he will avoid war even more than Biden did. Biden represented the mainstream military-industrial complex of the United States. In the mainstream U.S. approach, war is part of American power. For Trump, I think tariffs, threats, embargoes, isolation, other things are more the arsenal that he likes. Trump is going to be nasty in the Western Hemisphere, probably more than he's going to be in the Eastern Hemisphere. So I'd be more worried today in Canada or Mexico than in China. Let's put it that way. With Canada and Mexico, Trump doesn't exactly know or care where the borders are necessarily. He thinks Canada's part of the United States. He thinks Mexico is a pain in the neck for the United States, and he'll do what he wants to do. And so I wouldn't feel very comfortable being the United States' next door neighbor right now. But when it comes to China, he didn't mention China in the inaugural address. He said he wants peace, and I rather believe that, actually, at least peace among the major powers. I think the other thing to say about Trump is he believes that the United States is exceptional, and he believes that the big powers are different from all the rest of the world. He rather likes big, powerful countries and powerful leaders. And so I think actually whatever he does on trade and tariffs and other things, which will not be friendly necessarily to China, he will want a good relationship with President Xi Jinping. He'll want a good relationship with Vladimir Putin. This is not the same with Biden. maybe also Biden's health or status, we don't know, prevented diplomacy, but Biden was completely uninterested in normal diplomacy among leaders. Trump is much more interested. So it's a mixed bag. Again, if I were Panama, Canada, Mexico, I'd be pretty nervous today. But being in China and in Hong Kong, I think it's a pretty benign start. Nothing surprising, if anything, less antagonistic than one might have expected. Trump says he wants to visit China. That's a good thing. Absolutely. I hope that happens. Trump says he wants peace. I really hope that happens because that's the single most important issue for the whole world. And he didn't even mention in his inaugural all the other threats to the world trading system. So let's see. But first day, we've all survived it. America is now much less bound by international rules, but not going to war, at least between the major powers.
I'd like to at least to supplement some of the point first. And I think this is the first day of the Trump 2.0. And I think the whole world is going to be looking at this with tremendous amount of interest and anxiety, and some corners with pleasure. I think in my mind, what is really going to change from now is that the norms or the sort of a rule or order that we have been all used to for the last 50 years are going to be changed. And because so essentially the new administration is going to disrupt that norm or that order. And so it's all issues. That order obviously was originally established and maintained by the United States, and the United States is the biggest beneficiary of that order. Yeah. And I think that is no longer believed in America. And obviously, with that norm being disrupted, the whole world is going to look very, very differently, because either you are a beneficiary of it, or you grow into a comfort with it and be able to, secure your good positions in there. But now that is going to change, and that require you to respond. So I think, the world is just going to have a complete upside down in many, many ways. But that also means that, the table is going to get reset. And do you think
China, or specifically Hong Kong, is a beneficiary of the old world order?
Well, in so many ways, everybody is a beneficiary of that order, and then everybody dislikes some elements of that order. And so I don't think anybody is always completely happy with that. And even America, part of America love that order and would love to continue to maintain that order, but part of America think that order has totally ignored them. So they wanted to disrupt that order. The same as this with any other country, any other region. Even China, when you use the word China as if there's only one China, there are many elements of China. Some of the part were beneficiary of that order, and some of the part could be the beneficiary of the disruption of that order. So I just think we just all need to. The puzzle is being dispersed. The old puzzle, we need to re-put the puzzle back together, and I think it's a much more interesting world. And it's a world that's full of challenges, but you need to be agile and adapting. And it is not a world that you can just, like the old one, that you can stay there. And so a lot of things could change.
Professor Zhang.
And it reminds me of the allegedly very famous remark made by Henry Kissinger. It's dangerous to be the enemy of the United States, but it's fatal to be the ally of the United States. And when I look at this situation, as you mentioned, Canada, Denmark, and Greenland, whatever, this remark comes to my mind. And indeed, I think China can most probably play some very important role, because China is already the largest trading partner with over 140 countries. If really Donald Trump and his America decide to withdraw from globalization, we will carry on globalization, new style. We are in this position, de facto the largest economy by purchasing power parity. since a decade. So the world will become different. Yeah, but China is perhaps slightly more ready than many other countries to cope with Donald Trump.
Let me ask you something very specifically and see how it is received in Hong Kong and over in the West. Just before the inauguration, a couple of weeks ago, actually, end of 2024, China launched the two sixth-generation fighter jets, and an amphibian vessel, and another drone carrier, all within a week. Do you think that message is well received? I mean, well, with quote unquote, well received by the Trump administration. Was it necessary for the sake of world peace to show your muscle at that particular time?
I don't think that it makes much difference whether it's 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after. The basic point is we have three military superpowers armed to the teeth. And you could add India also as a major nuclear power that is also not so powerful in the conventional arms, but significant globally. None of these three powers can defeat the other, even conceptually, other than through world self-annihilation. In other words, the only threat that China faces from the United States is tantamount to a full nuclear war. The only threat that the United States faces from China is tantamount to a full nuclear war. The United States could not defeat Russia. Russia could not defeat the United States. Given all of this, the fact of the matter is we're actually secure, the major powers, if we don't blow up the world. The only risk to the major powers is world destruction. So if we stay out of each other's lane a bit, keep space between each other, don't provoke each other, the world actually is stable. The problem of the last 30 years was that the United States didn't know that there were two other superpowers whose lanes they kept crossing. So the United States thought Russia was a pushover, nothing to worry about. If we want to expand NATO to Ukraine, nothing Russia can do. If we want to expand NATO to the Caucasus region, nothing to do. If we want to expand NATO to Central Asia, nothing Russia can do. Well, the Ukraine war resulted from that kind of thinking, and it proved that the United States cannot beat Russia in its own neighborhood with conventional arms, and that any attempt to escalate, Russia would escalate, and we'd be on the way to world destruction. So the United States, I think, learned a lesson from this. Well, let me put it this way. The United States should learn a lesson from this, which is that its own behavior was obnoxious, provocative, and dangerous. The question is, did the United States learn the same lesson vis-a-vis China? Because there obviously are two provocations by the U.S. in China. One is Taiwan, and the other is the South China Sea. And if the United States is halfway sensible, it will say, we're not going to disturb you in your own neighborhood. This is your own business. And if the U.S. does that, there will be peace, there will be normal relations, there will be mutual security. If the United States says, well, we can do what we want, or it's worth provoking China, there will be disaster. Trump is probably a little bit less likely to provoke China than Biden was. Biden's administration was really incompetent, and they were rude to China, did not engage in diplomacy with China. A couple of meetings were held so that not everything fell apart. But basically, it was a terrible administration. The United States is in a very confused mood. And when I say the United States, all I mean is the elite in the security system, because the U.S. mentality, and Trump expressed it in his inaugural address, is the U.S. is the exceptional country. And if you take that belief seriously, you end up creating a lot of trouble because other countries just want you out of their front yard or backyard. And so whether Trump gets that and uses restraint, that's the major test of his presidency, actually. A smart president is one who exercises restraint in the mutual interest of the major powers. A stupid president is one who provokes the other major powers. And so this is Trump's single biggest challenge because the world's fate depends on this kind of challenge. Trump said that he understands Putin's point of view, that, in other words, if he were Putin, and I'm putting a little bit of words in Trump's mouth, but if he were Putin, he'd understand why NATO enlargement wouldn't look good. If he does the same thing, putting himself in China's perspective, and sees the United States arming Taiwan over China's big objections or militarizing further the South China Sea and building up missile systems, building up AUKUS, building up military relations, urging Japan to remilitarize and so forth, he would understand that the U.S. is provoking a lot of the reaction that it is pointing to, and rather both sides should calm down. Look, the United States, Trump can't even accept Greenland as being an independent country. He thinks Canada is a state. What he's really saying is the Americas are our backyard.
He wants to see passageway, right? Is that the reason why?
Look, there are many reasons, but it's a kind of crude American imperialism, I would say, that goes back to his favorite president of 1896, William McKinley. So it basically says, this is our neighborhood. Don't encroach on it. Now, the point I'm making is not that it's right to threaten Mexico or Canada, but if Trump uses the same logic just a little bit and understands China's point of view about America's actions, he would then adopt a more restrained point of view. And if he does and says, you know, we don't want to have war with China over the South China Sea or war with China over Taiwan, this would improve global security incredibly. So all of this is to say, yes, China's making huge advances in many arms systems, in missile systems, in nuclear, in hypersonic systems, and so on. Not surprising. But we don't want an arms race. We want mutual restraint. And this is really the question of whether the two sides can be smart enough to say, if we back off a little bit, don't encroach on each other's core interests, then the tensions will come down and we could actually make more money, have a better life, have more security, and so on.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧。